Welcome. My name is Jeremy Tucker. I serve as Ocean Pines' outside general counsel, and I've done that for around 4 years at this point in time. Just a little bit about me. I'm a shareholder with the law firm of Lurch, Early and Brewer, where I co-chair the Community Association Practice Group. I've represented community associations in the state of Maryland and District of Columbia for over 15 years. I have handled as many things as we can that come across our plate, and it's been my pleasure to represent Ocean Pines these many years. What I hope to discuss today is to give a general overview of the legal structure of Ocean Pines, what it means legally to live within Ocean Pines, the benefits and the burdens and the obligations of living in Ocean Pines, to talk briefly about the board structure, the board roles, the general manager's role, and you'll obviously hear more about that from John Viola, the current general manager, and just to give you a sense of sort of the legal framework of how Ocean Pines operates and what your responsibilities are to Ocean Pines and what Ocean Pines' responsibilities are to you. Then I'll end with a little bit of information about what my job as general counsel is. So let's just start with some of the basics. Ocean Pines is one of the largest homeowners associations in Maryland, either the top 3 or 4 largest homeowners associations in Maryland. And for any of you that have lived in other homeowners associations and are coming into Ocean Pines, you will notice a difference. You will notice the size of Ocean Pines, the amount of facilities, the amount of employees, the amount of administration that Ocean Pines has, and the amount of complex issues that come before the general manager, the board of directors, and my office that are not necessarily normal in a typical homeowners association, especially when you're dealing with 100+ employees, a police force, a public works department, a volunteer fire department, and just the sheer size and complexity that comes with those issues, which makes both living here and working for you a really interesting, wonderful thing to have. As any homeowners association, your homeowners association is subject to the Maryland Homeowners Association Act. And this is the statute that governs all homeowners associations within the state of Maryland. This act sets forth numerous requirements, such as open meetings, electronic voting, no impact home-based businesses, and a number of other issues. But overall, it's not an extraordinarily detailed statute. Most of what we follow comes out of our Declaration of Restrictions, our bylaws, our charter, and our rules, Ocean Pines rules. So that is sort of our general framework of how we operate. Unlike many associations that some of you may have been familiar with, we are a multi-section. Ocean Pines is a multi-section community, with each section having its own declaration of restrictions. That basically each section is created and was added into Ocean Pines Association. There are a number of sub-associations, sub-HOAs, sub-condominiums that fall and have their own declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, or declaration of condominiums. They are separate entities with their own board of directors. But most of the sections are not separate sub-associations. They are just with their own covenants that are part of Ocean Pines. And this creates a interesting level of analysis from my perspective, because potentially each section may have different requirements and different restrictions and different obligations. And each section has the ability to amend its own declaration of restrictions. So what I mean by that is, if our declaration is going to be amended, unlike in other communities where you have one declaration that governs the entire community, we have various sections declarations, and each of those declarations would need to be amended by the members of that individual section. So while it's not a sub-association, those members within that individual section have specific rights and control over what their section is going to operate and how it relates to Ocean Pines as a whole. There are 2 classes of members within Ocean Pines. There are what we'll call voting members. Those are the lot owners that have the right to vote. And then we have associate members. These are non-voting members that can join Ocean Pines to effectively use the community facilities, but they do not have a vote in the community, such as they don't have a right to vote for the election of board of directors. They don't have a right to vote in the various amendments to the bylaws or amendments to the Declaration of Restrictions. What makes another very interesting facet of Ocean Pines is you are a 501c4 tax exempt entity. Well, what that means is you are not required to pay income tax on income that the Ocean Pines generates. And you applied for that a number of years ago. But because you are a tax exempt entity, this means that your facilities are open to the public. So you may be asking, why is the public always in our pools? Why are they allowed at the beach? Why are they allowed in the parking lot? Well, that's because we Ocean Pines are required as part of our tax exempt status to keep our facilities open and accessible to the public. We're allowed to adopt certain rules of what that means, but we have to allow the members of the general public to use our facilities. So that makes a very interesting dynamic, is sometimes you won't necessarily have a neighbor or a member who are at the pool. It may be somebody who lives in a neighboring community or has just come into town for the weekend. That is a permissible use within Ocean Pines. As I mentioned, we have our governing documents are sort of what guides us, okay? And under our governing documents, the primary document is our Declaration of Restrictions. And as I mentioned, there is one Declaration of Restrictions for each section. I will be getting into that a little bit more of what those documents provide. Then we have our amended and restated charter, which is the Articles of Incorporation. This is filed with SDAT, the Maryland State Department of Assessment and Taxation. If you wanted to go to their website, you can certainly see that, and it's also on Ocean Pines' website. And then we have our bylaws and resolutions. The Declaration of Restriction are recorded in the land records of Worcester County. And this is the contract. Well, we as lawyers, this is what the contract is between the association and all of its members and the members and the association. This is where the rights, responsibilities, obligations, and benefits are all found. Because it is recorded in the land records, it runs with the land. What that means is no matter whether an owner wants to be a member of Ocean Pines, if they own a lot that is subject to the Declaration of Restrictions, they are a member and they are part of Ocean Pines and are bound by that Declaration of Restrictions. And whether or not they agree to it, whether or not it's referenced in the deed, that's what it means when it runs with the land. So if I sell my lot to somebody else, even if I don't disclose that I'm part of Ocean Pines and they purchased a home and they didn't realize it, they still are. And that is set up for a very important reason, to create automatic membership organization, and that we as the association do not have to worry about whether somebody is or not within the association. They are automatically in. And this creates a long-standing community that has certain boundaries and certain known membership ranks. The declaration grants each of the members an easement to use the streets and parks and allows all those owners and members the right to use the community facilities, the tennis courts, the beach, the swimming pools, based on the terms and conditions established by Ocean Pines. In exchange for that, there are certain obligations. So you get the right to use everything, get the right to the streets, you get the right to have drainage taken care of, you get the right to use the facilities. But in exchange for that, you have an obligation to pay the annual charge, what is in most other associations referred to as the annual assessment. Ocean Pines issues an annual assessment. It's not payable in monthly installments. Generally speaking, it's generally payable in one lump sum every year. And each owner has an obligation to pay that. If they fail to pay for that annual charge, then the association can take collection action against them. And I don't say this to be scary, but this is what happens. And I think all owners should know what happens if you don't pay assessments. And there are certain things that lawyers like me and we do on behalf of Ocean Pines is we can file a lien against your home and we can sue you for non-payment of assessments. And some people may think that, how could the association do that? How could they sue me? That's not right. And so, yes, on an individual basis, we certainly understand that. And we understand that everybody falls on the hardships. But for every owner that doesn't pay, the other owners make up for that lack of payment. So when the board adopts a budget, which we will discuss, it is based on an assumption that the owners are going to pay assessments. When owners don't pay the assessments, that is lost income to the association that has to be made up from other sources. Otherwise, we'll run a deficit. So Ocean Pines takes a very proactive role in the collection of assessments. And this has really helped the association reduce its outstanding AR for assessments and really set the tone that if you live here, you're going to have to pay. And that not only benefits the association, it benefits all of the other members. The declaration also contains the use restrictions. There are certain restrictions on how you can use your lot, what you can do on your lot, what you can't do on your lot. So it is very important to review those use restrictions to make sure that they are being addressed. There are also late lot maintenance obligations. Essentially, the declaration requires all of you to maintain your lots, to do grass cutting, make sure that your house is well maintained on the outside, no paint is chipping, the roof is well maintained, the gutters are not falling down. And this is for an obvious reason, is because the idea of living in a homeowners association is everyone agrees to a same sort of set of basic standards that they can count on their neighbors in pursuing. So if I move in there, I know what can and cannot be done on my neighbor's house, and I'm relying on that fact. And I'll give you an example. I was walking down the street today, and I saw must have been a 40-foot, 50-foot RV parked on a lot on the street. And so, which is fine. But if you live in a community that is not allowed, trailers are not allowed, for example, then you know that is not a situation that could happen. And you are buying in knowing that and counting on that fact. And then it is up to the association to enforce those use restrictions. And we do that through a violation process. We have a whole department that is addressing violations. And then lastly, the Declaration of Restrictions addresses architectural control, what you can build on your lot, how big it can be on your lot, what the process is if you want to make modifications to the exterior of your lot. And this goes through an architectural approval process. We have a committee that handles all of those things, and you are effectively prohibited from making exterior modifications to your home without getting association approval. And this has become, sometimes a source of contention, but it is, again, for the same reason why the association enforces its use restrictions. It also affects the architectural control, because all owners, when they move here, they have one, agreed to this term, and two, your neighbors are counting on this process. That, in my world, we talk about the pink door or something out of the ordinary from an extreme example, that the neighbors want to make sure that there is going to be some consistency with what is approved, that there are going to be some design specifications for what can and what can't be approved. So everybody's playing on the same playing field, so they don't come home one day and find something unbelievable that they had no expectation would be built on their neighboring lot. And that is sort of part of this shared burden, but the shared benefit of living within a homeowners association and living within Ocean Pines. And that is your declaration. Your bylaws are really the internal operating document which addresses the size of the board, how meetings are called, the powers and duties of the board of directors, your voting rights, the general powers of the general manager, and those are what is and how the annual meeting and how voting occurs. And that is really when we're talking about how sort of governance happens, we look to the bylaws. So when we look for rights, responsibilities, and obligations with respect to lot owners and the association, we look to the Declaration of Restrictions. And so those are how the interplay of those documents. Often many will refer to the declaration as the bylaws, but these are very important distinctions. The bylaws in an HOA, such as Ocean Pines, are not recorded in the land records. Rather, they are filed in the HOA depository. That is just one of the ways that the statute, the Maryland Homeowners Association Act, works, is that there is no obligation to record the bylaws in land records. So they are filed with Maryland State Department of Assessment and Taxation. Turning to your governance structure, you are governed by a 7-member board of directors who are elected by the members. The board of directors then elects officers. There's the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. Currently, and we have a recording secretary, which is not a formal officer. So those officers serve at the pleasure of the board of directors and can be removed by the board of directors. The board of directors serves at the pleasure of the members. Since the members elect them, the members can remove them by a certain vote. We also have a very significant committee structure, which is a little bit about more at Ocean Pines. And the committees, for the most part, are appointed by the board of directors. And then at Ocean Pines, we are, in my world, referred to as really a general manager run community, that the general manager has a significant amount of authority, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But the general manager is hired by the board of directors. So we have a board of directors, officers, committees, and general managers. And it is important to understand also that the officers, they are all currently comprised of directors. So when a officer serves as a director, they are effectively wearing 2 hats. They are serving as a director, and then they are also serving as an officer. So they have the role of, for example, the president, who runs the meetings, but they also are serving in that same capacity as a director. So they serve in 2 roles currently. So digging deeper into the board of directors, the board is comprised of 7 members, as I mentioned. Each are elected to 3-year terms. The terms are staggered. So what that means is that every meeting, every annual election, you are electing a different number of directors, and that way that we are hopefully never in a situation where you are electing all 7 directors. And why is this, you may ask? Is because most of people who work with boards believe that having continuity on the board is a very good thing. That having people who have institutional knowledge from year over year, year after election, so that when the handoff occurs to the new board members, there are 1, 2, or 3 existing directors that have that knowledge of what has transpired for at least the previous year, if not longer. We do have a limit we have a term limit on directors. A director can only be elected for 2 3-year terms, and that prevents a director from sitting there in the board for too long period. And it also encourages new interest, new members to come. But again, with a staggered term, this ensures that we do have that knowledge transfer from board to board. So effectively, the board is not learning things all anew. We're not recreating the wheel each time, and that the handoff can happen efficiently and effectively. The board is elected by ballot. This balloting process happens prior to the annual meeting. First, the election committee will solicit nominations. Then a ballot will be mailed out, and then all voting members will then have a period of time by a deadline to submit their ballot. And then the election committee will count the votes. And then the election results are certified at the annual meeting. Board of directors' powers and duties are set forth in the bylaws and generally under Maryland corporate law. We have the board of directors adopts the annual budget, and from this annual budget sets forth that annual charge that I was discussing. The board is responsible for hiring the general manager, adopting rules, establishing limits on expenditure and contractual approval, determining what, for example, what the general manager can approve and what needs to come to the board of directors. So they get and to appoint committees. The general manager at Ocean Pines has a very important and very difficult role. The general manager serves as the manager of all departments and is responsible for organizing all of the various positions, departments for an efficient operation, and that comes directly from your bylaws. The general manager is also the chief personnel officer and has the power to hire, fire, promote, or discharge association employees in accordance with the personnel policies established by the board of directors. So the general manager here at Ocean Pines is very much responsible for the day-to-day operations of the community, and the board of directors is responsible for the general oversight, the direction, the goals of Ocean Pines. So the idea here is that the board really sets the macro view of where Ocean Pines is going, what the policies are, what the objectives are. And it is up to the general manager and the general manager's team to execute those decisions, to figure out how best to achieve that. And that really allows the board to really focus on the big picture items and requires the general manager really to get in the weeds of the decision making and really focus on that. And that is being a very effective tool of the separation of powers of how to do that. My role is the last thing to talk about is to serve as the association's general counsel. I serve in the capacity of advising the board of directors on giving opinions on how to do things, what they should or should not do, what they can do, how to enforce the governing documents. We also take care of dealing with collections when the matter needs to be turned over to the association's attorney, and how to take action to address that. We also serve in representing your HR issues, working with your HR director and your general manager on dealing with the numerous employee issues that come up. As I mentioned, unlike many small associations, given the sheer number of employees that you have, making sure that employment matters, which are highly contested and litigated matters, are addressed proactively. This includes regular training of your employees, dealing with your HR employee handbook, and really working with your employment team to create an environment and a culture of positivity that while in compliance with law. Well, I hope that this was an enjoyable and was a potentially short review of the governance structure, and I'm certainly happy to come back and give more details. I wanted to provide you with this general overview of who you are, how you operate, and what you do. Thank you.